Hi, and welcome back to Reflect Forward. I'm your host, Carrie Siggins, and I am so glad to be bringing you my guest today, Jocelyne Morin-Nurse. I met Jocelyne through Forbes Business Council. She writes for them. She also leads one of their networking groups. And once I learned about her, I knew I had to have her on the show. She is the CEO of a company called Corgi Bytes. It's a software company that helps modernize old code. And her true passion lies in leadership development and leadership training. So, in addition to running Corgi Bites, she also is the CEO and founder of Loxentus, which is a leadership and team training company. And they develop courses and training that helps leaders, CEOs, entrepreneurs attract and retain talent and develop themselves as leaders so that they create great companies to work for. I love her leadership philosophy. She reminds me so much of myself. We have so much fun talking about it. We could have gone on for hours and hours, but I didn't want to bore you with that. So we stopped at about 45 minutes. And you're just going to be so inspired by her thought process, her leadership philosophy, and her stories. So hang tight and I'll be right back with Jocelyn. All right, everyone. I am back with Jocelyn Morin-Nurse. Jocelyn, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Well, thank you so much, Carrie. I'm so excited to be talking about leadership with you. This is going to be
I
great.
know, my favorite topic, and I know yours
Yes,
too.
absolutely.
All right. Well, I described who you are a little bit in the pre-show, but I want to hear in your own words. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do a couple of things. Actually, I do many things, but I'm only going to speak about a couple. So I'm the CEO of a software company that's called Corgi Bytes. And I am also the CEO of my own company where I do some leadership training. And I'm involved in all kinds of stuff. And I love talking about leadership, super passionate about it. And that's pretty much what I do.
So that sounds familiar because I get asked this question all the time. So now I'm going to ask you, like, how do you do all of these different things? Like, how do you run a company, and how do you have a leadership development company as well? How does all that work for you?
Well, let's start with I work a lot. So I'm
Yeah.
very busy. But really, it's just being extremely organized. I have also great teams. So I have a team, obviously, at Corgi Bites, and I have a team for Loxentus. And it's a lot of great communication with the team, staying on top of the tasks, having boards, knowing what's going on, keeping a pulse on things. And something that's super, super important that sounds counterintuitive, taking good care of myself. So, for instance, I make sure I work out. And if I don't work out, I go for a walk outside. I make sure I eat well. I make sure that I sleep and drink lots of water. But it's so crucial, especially on those days where I'm so, so busy. I'm like, I don't have time for this. I don't have time to work out. Then those are the days where I need to pause, go for a workout, go for a spin bike, go do a yoga, do something that'll take your mind off of work and just let your body release that stress.
Yeah, I agree. My motto is self care is a discipline, not a luxury,
It's
and
true.
it is a non-negotiable. And I think a lot of people think like, well, like that's just yet one more thing that you have to cram into your day, but you can't. I literally cannot function if I
No.
don't exercise and move my body. And so it really is to me a performance enhancer rather than a detractor because I have to fit something else into my day. So I hear you. Good for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if we don't, then all that stressful energy stays in the body and then our minds get really tired. And then we're
Yeah.
prone to decision fatigue.
Yes, and that's bad. We need to be
That's
decisive
bad.
as leaders. All right, so we're gonna talk about Loxentus and leadership, but maybe let's just give us a little bit of a context about your software company. So, what's the premise behind what you do
At the software company?
at at the software company? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm CEO there. So I'm not the owner of that company. It's
Mhm.
kind of an interesting story how I became
Yeah,
CEO
tell us.
of that company because I wasn't planning on becoming an executive. So it's kind of neat in the sense that I would say that how it all started really was when I left my public service job. So, my husband and I sold most of our possessions. We just kept the teeny tiny storage unit with like irreplaceables. And then we went and we sailed. We're cruising on a sailboat for a year. Then we changed and lived on a motorhome for 4 years. And during that time, I was writing to earn money. And then I was taking positions of convenience. And then after this, 5 years of nomadic lifestyle, I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe we'll become fixed address living people again. And part of something that I think is kind of neat is a lot of people had been so concerned about this. They're like, these are your prime earning years. What are you doing? You're walking away from this big important job and you could, become director and whatever. It's like, and they're just walking away to go sailing. So anyway, so we did that for 5 years and it just gave me so much perspective on life and myself. And then I was just going to go grow my writing business. And I saw this opportunity to be an executive assistant essentially at this software company. And so I did that because for me, being organized comes easily. So I thought, oh, that would be something easy for me to do while I grow my writing business. And then I started working with them, and they're such wonderful people. And there was this opportunity for me to help, and I love to help, and that's just kinda in my DNA. I can't help it. I need to help. I need to offer advice if I have it, if I can do something to improve, I will be there. I work very hard at whatever I do. And then I became their director of accounts and content. And then through doing and seeing results, and then they offered me the COO position. And then I was responsible for financials and improving operations and that kind of stuff. And then at one point, they offered me the CEO position. And that's what I'm doing now. So it's kind of funny because people who knew me from way back then, when I was like pursuing acting or pursuing screenwriting, and I tell them, "Oh, yeah, I'm the CEO of a software company, and I also run my own company where I do team training." There's this blank stare going, "What?" But it was just through a genuine desire to help and a genuine desire to have impact, and having this impact, seeing the impact on the team and just improving and you're growing the company. It was just such an amazing experience. And yeah, so that's how it happened.
I love it. What a great story. Oh, that's so cool to climb the ladder like that. Mine is not quite as dramatic as a executive assistant to CEO, but I was 28. I just moved to
Uh-huh.
Durango, which is a rural town in western slope of Colorado, and
Okay.
I grew up on the western slope of Colorado, but I had left Austin, Texas, and Stone Age, the company I run now, is looking for a
Mhm.
general manager, but I had no qualification. Well, I would just say no
Mhm.
qualifications. I had some
Yeah.
experience, but, can't run a company. And
Yeah.
they hired me to take
Wow.
over. Yeah. So I started as operations manager, director of operations, general manager, CEO in about a 3-year time span as well. So
Wow.
yeah. So anyway, similar
That's
story, but it's all about the
amazing.
result, right? Yeah.
Exactly, the results, and I don't know about you, but for myself, it was just I was so determined to
Yeah.
succeed in the sense doing a good job, right? And so I was just, like, reading everything I could, like,
Yeah.
books, attending
Yeah.
seminars, just talking to experts in their fields, like a senior accountant. "Okay, I don't understand this financial statement. Let's explain this to me." Just so determined to do a good job that I was just grabbing knowledge wherever I could. Was that similar for you?
So similar, absolutely. Mentors. I joined YPO, Young Presidents Organization, so that I could, to learn from peers and to just surround myself with people who are more knowledgeable than me. Built a board of directors that I learned from. So it was like
Wow.
read, experience,
Exactly.
learn. Like I just wanted to be a successful executive as quickly as I could, and I made so
Yeah.
many mistakes and screwed so many things up, but I'm really grateful for all of that too because,
Yeah.
that's how you learn, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. All right, so now great, you're CEO of a software company, and now tell us about Loxentus. Like, how did that come to be? How did you birth that idea?
That's very interesting. So, it actually started because so while I was learning all these things and actually doing and seeing the impact of certain strategies and implementing those, I saw somebody who had a very, very big, massive following and was giving the most terrible advice. And when I looked into it, this person had no experience and wasn't even learning from people who knew. So it's not like, oh, well, I spoke to these people, they know, and
Right.
therefore I'm passing this knowledge. Like they were just pretty much making it up. And they started giving such bad advice that I was like, this would sink a company. And I was like, I have to share what I've learned. I have to start teaching people what I know. And I just have this idea also. So for me, and we've talked a little bit about it prior about people-centric organizations. And so
Mhm.
people matter, right? And so in trying to grow an organization, it was important for me to also pass on that message that it wasn't just let's teach someone how to recruit or let's teach someone how to do one-on-ones, but it's let's teach them how to do it in a way that will create people-centric organizations, in a way that will attract and retain top talent. And I'm saying top talent, quote unquote, because let's face it, top talent varies from one organization to the next, right? So
Right.
the ideal candidate for one organization is not the same for the other. So it's to create something that is um, tailored to your own organization so that people can be successful there. And so I just became very passionate about passing along those lessons learned, but also infusing it with this idea that people are important and it's not mutually exclusive. It's not, well, if I'm profitable, I can't, offer this to my team members. Like, no, no, you can do both.
Yep, totally agree. You're speaking my language, sister. Uh, so okay, so that was your idea, and so then how did you start the company, and what exactly, tell us about your leadership training. What do you do?
Yeah. So, well, I teach recruiting. I created an online recruiting course. I teach one-on-ones. I teach operational improvements. And at the beginning of this whole thing, a friend and I collaborated to create a course that was on leading a remote team because the software company is actually fully remote. And so for us, it was okay, we've been remote the whole time. So now we're just continuing to be remote, but we realized a lot of people weren't. So we kind of had done that too. And so, yeah, it's just teaching and teaching leaders how to work with team members, how to improve themselves as leaders, because we need to improve ourselves to be better leaders for our team members as well.
Yeah. I'm so glad that we're having this conversation because of course, I don't have a training company and that's not what I plan to do, but I speak on leadership. I
Right.
write on leadership, right? I mean, we met through Forbes and I do a lot on social media, building a brand really around this whole idea that we need to be more effective leaders to
Yeah,
change the world, to solve some of the world's biggest problems. And people
absolutely.
always ask me, like, why are you doing this? Right? Don't you have enough to do running your companies? And well, of course, yes, but
Yeah.
there's this need that is out there, and I see it because I see it with leaders who work within Stone Age, with boards that I'm on,
Yeah.
and community members. It's like there's just it's so confusing, and there's so much information that's out there, and it's hard to relate when people don't tell stories and like give like these real
Hmm.
experiences, these raw experiences about how you can really screw leadership up because that's how you learn,
Yep.
right? And so anyway,
Absolutely.
so I share your passion and really appreciate that you've said, "Hey, I can be a CEO and grow a
Yeah.
company, and I can also pursue this passion of being helpful and impactful
Yeah.
by developing other leaders." Because
Mhm.
I get a lot of people like questioning me, like, what are you
Really?
doing? Or do you have time for this? Like,
Wow.
and yeah, definitely. And so anyway, it's nice to meet like a kindred soul who,
Yeah,
who's doing
absolutely.
the same thing.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm, yeah. So, were you also somehow inspired by Robert Greenleaf's work on servant leadership?
I would say that that the way that I have developed it really came before reading his work,
Okay. Yeah,
and all of that. I just always knew that I was supposed to help, and I really am
yeah,
curious and care about people,
yeah,
and so I ask good questions and I dive in, and so
yeah,
that's what really helped me see like, oh, you can make this impact, and then later on once I read servant leadership and really began to understand that whole model. It was like, oh yes, this is how I am and here's how I can
yep.
do how I can be more impactful that way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it was something that always just came naturally to me, I think.
Mhm,
How
mhm.
about for you?
Yeah, yeah, very similarly. I always had this idea that a leader should be present. I was just reminded of this. I don't know if you've seen it. There's this little cartoon going around. So you have a leader versus boss, and so there's one. It's a big block, and the team is pulling the block, and then it says leader, and then the leader's at the front of the team, and then you've got the boss, and then
Uh-huh.
the boss is sitting on the block and the
Yeah.
team is pulling the block and the boss sitting on the block. And so
Yep.
that really spoke to me in the sense that for me, I've always thought the leader is there, is there with the team in the thick of things, going, all right,
Mhm.
team, we're here. That whole role modeling was
Yeah.
very important. That just do as I say, don't do as I do. Yeah, good luck with that. That is
Yeah.
not going to retain top talent. That is not, no. So it's, you have to be there and do as a leader and have that responsibility. And I've always had that concept that a leader should be fair, because sometimes we have to make some tough decisions. I mean, we can't just always be, yes, be nice, be kind, if team members aren't keeping their part of that contract, right? That contract is, as a leader,
Right.
I will provide you with awesome working conditions. I will support you. I will provide you with the great tools. And in return, you're going to be productive and you're going to, improve the business and you're going to, deliver outstanding service to our clients and that kind of stuff. So if the team leader is not respecting that, then we have to get tough sometimes. But we're fair and at the same time benevolent, which is
Yep.
kind of the concept.
Yeah, I totally agree. I always tell my team, it takes all of us, right? Culture is not
Mhm.
me.
Yes.
Culture is collectively all of us.
Yes.
And yes, well, the buck stops with me and I certainly set the tone and I think that the company definitely has my personality, which is very driven, very fun,
Yep.
very
Yep. Yep.
positive. It still takes you to show up that way too.
Yes.
So if you say, I
Yes.
don't like this culture, it's easy to point the finger at the leader. And a lot of
Mhm.
times it does. But
Mhm.
you always have to say, how am I showing up and either improving the
Yes.
culture or taking away from it? And it's such a two-way street. And I personally think that responsibility is empowering, right? I mean, I've worked for
Yes.
crappy companies and I've had crappy bosses, and they are as much role models for me, of what
Yeah.
not to be.
What not to do.
Um, exactly. But I always had that accountability of like, well, how am I still showing up? Because I'm still
Yes.
responsible for me and I'm still responsible for
Mhm.
my mindset and what
Mhm.
my output.
Yep.
And so I try to help people see this like you can control your experience so much more, even if it isn't a great culture, than you do
Yep.
by just saying, nope, like I'm going to contribute to it being a bad place to work too.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes it requires a lot of effort showing up
Yeah.
in that positive way while being authentic because
Yeah.
we don't want to create that toxic positivity, right? That
No.
no, everything's fine, everything's. Always great here, haha. So at the same time, we don't want to show up because I'm sure you've got those days too. There's some days where it's like, you know what? I'm tired and I don't want to talk to anyone and I just want to be grumpy. And it's like, well, I can't because I have a whole team that depends on my energy. But
Yep.
also, I don't want to show up, la, 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 everything is fine. The world is all rosy. It's like, no, there's some tough things. And yeah, I'm not having the best day, but I'm not going to bring that brooding negative energy to the team.
Yep.
There's that
Yep.
responsibility.
I agree, and I think role modeling like that is so important because you're right, everybody's gonna have bad days, and
Hmm.
and as a leader, when you say, "Hey, I'm having a bad day and I'm struggling, I'm gonna show up as my best self, but I
Hmm.
want you to know that I'm struggling," and then
Yes.
you do the work, and you show
Yep.
up and you engage, even if you're not your high
Yep.
energy self, you're showing people like, "Hey, it's okay to say, I'm not doing
Yes.
great," but you still model that, you can put your best
Yes.
foot forward rather than
Mhm.
just melt down.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I guess it comes back, as you just said, that role modeling, that continuous role modeling.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've learned the hard way too. I mean, I've definitely not handled all situations well. In fact, like my motto has been for the last many years, really cool, calm, and collected because I can be very passionate And that can come across as aggressive, as I've been told,
Oh,
or
okay.
emotional, right? Right. A lot of things
Oh,
that passionate, women are called. Um,
yeah.
but I realized I realized that in some instances it was taking away from the conversation or taking away
Mhm.
from the situation rather than infusing energy into it. And so,
Yes.
everything is just so much easier when a leader is cool, calm, and collected. Like there's a time where
Yes.
maybe you need to like amplify yourself a little bit. For the most part, people respond so much
Yeah,
better when you're just like, all right, let's just talk about this. But you had
absolutely.
to learn all of that as a young leader. How about you?
Yes, absolutely, and I think that is one of the most important things to learn as a leader, how to self-regulate and to know what our triggers are.
Yeah.
Because as we grow and learn ourselves, we learn more about what triggers us and what past experiences we bring in and kind of filters we bring in. And in learning that about ourselves, we also learn that about our team members. And so, because our team members also bring in their own past experiences and triggers, and it's trying to negotiate that and figure out, okay, what belongs in the here and now, the reaction that's happening right now. Is this really because of something I did, or is it no, that really belongs to a past experience? And that's something that's hard to navigate, and it's only in learning more about ourselves that we can learn how to do that for our team members or with our team
Yeah.
members.
I'm so with you. We lead the very same way. So, how do you advise your clients? So, if you're working with leadership, doing leadership training, I mean, do you bring this into what you do? And how do you help
Absolutely.
leaders develop that self awareness to say, "Oh, yeah, this is a trigger for me, and I understand where that trigger comes from."
Yeah, I talk a lot about my own experiences and how I am as a leader. And the way you're like right now, who I am is who I am as a leader. Like
Right.
it's important to be authentic and like authentic. And I'm gonna say curated authentic, because just to talk a little bit like what we said before, right? We want to regulate our emotions and show up as our best selves, but still be authentically ourselves. And that's actually something that I learned a long time ago. It was when I was a translation intern, and we had this director who was just like silly, fun, joked all the time, listened to music, dancing down the hallway, just silly person, lots of fun. And his work was exceptional. The quality of the work that he's produced, like outstanding. And that person told me, like long, long, long time ago, he said to me, it's always important to take your work seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. And that so stayed with me. And it showed me that I can be, because I'm just naturally a person who likes to laugh. I'm naturally a person who likes to be, pleasant, and let's joke around and let's, yes, we're working hard, but it doesn't have to be painful. And at the same time, the quality of the work matters. So it's
Yeah.
just bringing that authenticity in leadership, and that's kind of what I tell people, that there might be this idea, because you mentioned something about women earlier, but there might be this idea that bringing a little bit more softness, a little bit more feminine energy, oh, that's a weakness. No, you have to show up. If you're going to be a leader, if you're going to be a CEO, you have to be, tough, and you have to be and speak with a big voice and not smile a lot and have a lot of PowerPoint presentations. I don't know. But no, you don't have to be that person. You can be an effective leader and an effective CEO and being yourself. And if you're not yourself, I would say the team is going to pick up on something and they're not going to trust you, because they won't know what necessarily, but they're like, I don't know, there's something here that's not jiving. And it's going to be hard to gain that trust.
Yep, I
So just
agree
gotta
with you.
teach to be ourselves and then just be authentic and then just be undeniably awesome in what you do. Like, just put
Yeah.
in the work, but be yourself.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, and I think that whole idea of understanding yourself also comes along with the idea of understanding the emotional impact that you have on others. And I think like that
Yes.
was the big thing for me is, I show up I can't not be myself. I literally can't not be myself. It's impossible for me not to be. But but I can, like you say, I can regulate my emotions, I can regulate
Mhm.
my responses, and I can understand the emotional impact that I have on people,
Yeah.
and I think that especially young leaders and some
Yes.
experienced who haven't developed that self-awareness or who've gone deep into that self-exploration don't necessarily understand or maybe even care about the emotional impact that they have on people, and your
Yeah.
employees are watching everything you do. They're watching your facial
Absolutely.
expressions. They're trying to read between the lines and pick up on any kind of hint of like, are you upset or this
Yep.
or that?
Yep.
And so I think as I've matured as a leader, I
Mhm.
think understanding that emotional impact has been really valuable for me because I
Yep.
want to be authentic. I want to be myself, but I want to be
Mhm.
effective. And to be an
Yes.
effective leader, you've got to meet people where they're at. And if you overwhelm
Yes.
them with your positivity or
Yep.
your, upset or your passion or whatever it is
Yep.
that's coming out, then you're not going to be effective. And so I
Yep.
think like the melding of those two things has been, at least for me, a really powerful experience.
Absolutely. And it's learning to channel that passion into healthy conflict. That was a
Yeah.
really hard one for me because I was like, "Oh, conflict. Ah, no, conflict's bad." But no, there can be healthy conflict. And so we joke a lot about how we have some passionate discussions about a
Yeah.
topic. But we're always aware first that we're essentially on the same side. We want what's best for the organization. We want to find the best solution, quote unquote best. And so it's like, okay, I feel this way, you feel that way, we're complete opposites. Is there a third option that we're not seeing right now that if we both recognize that we're on the same side, let's lean into the conflict, let's keep talking about it in a respectful way, and let's see what comes out. And the more at the beginning, oh, so hard, like sweating, finding it difficult, oh, and leading to conflict. But the more I did it, the more I recognized like it's okay. We're just gonna come together. We're gonna keep talking. We keep moving forward together, leaning into it. And the outcome, for the most part, has been very positive. So it's kind of reinforcing that it's okay. Like conflict's not always bad.
Yep. No, I'm with you. And it's interesting. I think that the very best leaders know how to lean into that conflict. Like that's what we're supposed to do, right? We're all have our own thoughts, our experiences that shape our viewpoints. And
Yeah.
we need to be able to discuss those things. One of the things that I do with my team, and I feel like after a lot of development, we've gotten to a really good place, and that is the expectation of working through conflict, especially without me
Ah,
involved with it. And so we have
yeah.
we have team operating principles, and one of those is that you resolve conflict amongst your peers without triangulating
Mhm, mhm.
and seeing both sides and come up with an outcome that everybody can live with. And you go through the
Okay.
pros and you go through the cons of each of these. And I set the expectations with my team, like you are not going to be successful here if you cannot resolve conflict with your peers. And so then I've been teaching people how to do it, modeling how to
Okay.
do it, certainly
Mhm.
stepping in when I need to. But now after many years of my team working together, it is amazing to watch them work through conflict. And I'm so proud of it because they should be. Like, they're all coming from different viewpoints. There's always natural
Yeah,
tension between sales and
absolutely.
engineering, sales and ops and engineering, marketing and sales, and that tension can be really healthy if you know how to effectively deal with conflict. So, I've had set some really good expectations, boundaries, and training around how to deal with it, and it's made a huge difference.
That's what I was going to ask you because if you have a new team member who's not used to coming, let's say, from an environment, let's say a unionized environment where no, 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 everything is, by the book. So how do you teach that person to, I'm going to say, change their mindset and grow into that healthy,
Well,
lean into the
yeah,
healthy
so
conflict? Yeah.
great question. So part of it comes through the interviewing process, which, I do want to
Okay.
to talk to you a little bit about recruiting, but I have our team operating principles. And so when I'm interviewing somebody to come onto the executive team, we sit down, we talk very detailed about that. And
Okay.
honestly, if a person comes from a background like that, they're probably not going to fit into my team.
Right.
And I've realized that because I've tried to bring in like going, okay, hey, this is really great experience, but there's these two like things that are kind of missing. I can teach it. And that's really difficult. So I use our team operating principles because I now
Mhm.
I have it really clearly outlined what I want,
Wow.
what's required to be successful on the executive management team at Stone Age. You can talk about those things and really like dig into it, but that doesn't mean that everybody's good at it, right?
Right,
If there's a conflict, especially with a new team member, I join in and I
okay.
help model how we work through it. So we just had this happen.
Ah,
I have a new team member, on my executive management team. We had an issue with a new product, and, they came to me with what it was like. I could see what was going on. He could see he was so nervous, and I said, "Okay, let's just walk through this." So, I asked questions. I said, "Hey, you don't have pros and cons here. I need to understand the trade-offs. We can't have this conversation until we have the trade-offs." They went back to it. We discussed it, we debated it. I asked his opinion. And then he came back and he said, "I've never seen conflict modeled like that. Like, we came to a
wow.
really great solution
Mhm.
because of the way the pros and the cons, the trade-offs, listening to everybody, asking opinions. Can you agree with this? If we do this, can you
Yes.
get on board?" And so just trying to model that way. And
Yeah.
then, just keeping following up. But the only way to do it is to do the hard work of getting in
Yep.
there and saying, "Okay, let's
Yep.
figure this out. Let's figure this
Yep.
out."
Yep.
Uh-huh.
I just
Yeah.
love how you did that because you're really taking role modeling to that next level while you're actually playing out a scenario, essentially. It's like, I am
Totally.
there. I'm going to show you. So you watch.
Yeah.
This is how we do this. That is really
Exactly.
great.
And I build that into, our onboarding program. So
Hmm.
I would never bring in a new executive and just say, "Okay, here's your 90-day plan,
Yeah.
and you're on your own," right? I
Right.
am in those meetings showing him or her how we communicate,
Nice.
showing them how I lead. And I think that that's really an effective way because people do model, they do mirror. And
Hmm.
then I can always point back to say, "Okay, remember when we had this issue that came up and how we
Yep.
talked through that? Okay,
Yep.
practice it that way."
Yep.
And let's talk about what happened, what we did, the decisions that were made. Now go practice that way. And
Yes.
it takes time, but
Hmm.
people want to handle conflict well. They just are never taught.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. And I bet also that it helps with retention in the sense that it shows that you care. Like
Yeah,
you are there concretely showing that you care.
yeah,
And then they probably feel heard and they feel like they're growing as well. Like who doesn't want to grow while being at work as well? We want to
exactly.
grow as individuals. That's what
Yeah.
will help with retention. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's been a lot of years of trial and error of not
Yeah.
getting it right, but I feel like after making some hiring mistakes, especially at that executive level,
Yes.
I've gotten a much better process and philosophy around it. So, anyway, the team operating principles really help, because you can have like the hard conversations, like, "Hey, look, hey, if these things don't resonate with you, if this makes you
Mhm.
uncomfortable and you don't want to do this, this is probably not the right company for you because we're not going to change these
Exactly.
things."
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. And it's recognizing it's not saying you're a bad person. It's saying
Yeah.
you will likely be successful elsewhere
Yep.
because organizations are all different. So just because
Totally.
I'm saying you're not likely to be successful here has no reflection, is no reflection on you as a person. It's just the skill sets would be a better match over there.
Yep, I love it. It's such a positive way to put it, and it's so true, right? Not everybody's going to like your culture, fit into that
Yeah,
culture. It's not gonna work, and that's okay. It's totally fine. We don't have to force it. Well, let's
exactly.
Mhm, mhm. So talk to me about how you go through. I mean, obviously with the era of resignation, the great resignation, whatever they're calling it. How are you coaching and leading your clients through this idea of talent, recruitment, development, and retention? Do you have a secret sauce that you can share with us?
Well, I'm really glad that you mentioned that because it really all starts, as you were saying earlier, with the recruiting process. Like you have a really great sense of who would be successful at your organization. And so it kind of starts there. And then determining what your team really needs and kind of almost like creating that avatar of do you need someone exactly pretty much like a clone of somebody you already have? Do you need someone who would be a complement to that person? So kind of really getting clear on that. And then through the interviewing process, ensuring that it's infused with the culture of the organization to really get that information out and see whether that person would be successful. Because it's like we were saying, it's not about, oh, this person's a bad employee. It's, would this person likely go is this person likely going to be successful here? Because I mean, really, we all want someone to be successful. Hiring is expensive. Like the whole recruiting process, the onboarding process, ramping them up to productivity. If they don't work out, if that recruiting process is not tight and they don't work out, it's expensive to have that revolving door. And then we want them to stay. And so, do we have something that we can offer that team member that will make them want to grow within the organization? Can we help them grow? Can we support them? And so those are all ways that can help in attracting the right people and especially retaining the right people. And then that part of retention is, I would say, a big part of it is the one-on-ones and ensuring that it's not just supporting them as professionals in their career, but also supporting them as individuals. Because there are some people that what they do is their entire lives. You would not pay them and they would still do it because they love it so much. And for some people, it's like, well, I need to earn a living. I enjoy doing this. I'm going to give my all while I'm at work. But while I'm off, I'd like to do other things. And it's supporting those two individuals where they're at. So that person who's like super career is my life, because not just because it's career, but that this what I do is my life. So how do you support that person is very different than the person who's like, yeah, while I'm here, I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to be awesome. And I also have some other personal goals. So it's learning to manage those various personality types. And then, as we said earlier, also the filters that they bring in, the life experiences that they bring in, and learning more about that. Being a people-centric leader really requires learning about people and
Yes.
treating them, meeting them where they are, and really supporting them.
I agree. And the question I get asked often, I give a keynote on creating people-centric organizations. And the question I get is, how do you scale this? Right. And it's
Right.
such an interesting one because and I said, you're looking at it the wrong way, right? You cannot scale connection. You just can't, because it takes time to
Hmm.
understand each of the individual people who work for you and be
Yeah.
able to modify yourself to give them what they need so that they feel fulfilled and seen and heard and cared for at work.
Yes.
And so, the way that you have to scale it is you have to create a training program to train everybody who supervises people how to do these things, how to build those
Yes.
connections. But that's why I think we're in such a mess that we're in, where people are so dissatisfied, right? The great resignation is really the
Yes.
great disconnection. And
It's
it's because
true.
people either don't care about the relationship because they have to just get their work done, or, they think,
Yes.
oh, well, it's just unscalable. So how can I really do it? And we're looking at it the
Yes.
wrong way, right? We shouldn't scale
Absolutely.
connections. We should build connections. And,
Yes.
and it's a different way to look at it, but it takes time and effort to do what you just said, right? To understand that
Yep.
every person on my team needs something different from me as a leader, and to be really
Yep.
exceptional at what I do, I have to be able to meet that person where they're at.
Yes, absolutely. And
Mhm.
you just mentioned disconnection. A part of that as well is helping the team member understand why what they do matters, so that they don't just feel like, okay, I'm doing this work, but why am I doing it? Like if they understand the impact that if they don't do their job, look at what's going to happen. If you don't do this well, see how this client doesn't get what they really need, and this impacts, and kind of showing them that, yeah, you're not just a person here. You're part of a team, part of a whole,
Yep.
and like you're important. What you do is important. So that's also a
Yeah.
big part of creating that connection.
Totally understand. Yeah, line of sight. I need to understand how I fit into this.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah, that's how we feel more purposeful at work. I'm with you. I'm with
exactly,
you. Yeah,
exactly. And
yeah,
also that ripple, having that ripple effect also applies to them. So showing them how their professional work impacts has that ripple effect. But it's also as leaders understanding that ripple effect that we have on them as people,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that the way that they are at work, the way we treat them is going to be carried outside the organization. And if we support them and let's say make them feel good while they're at work, well, they're going to walk away feeling good and hopefully maybe, treat their spouse a little bit better or their child or their whatever, the stranger next to them or whatever. And it's just carrying that positivity forward.
Yeah, I'm so with you. My biggest goal is that people leave Stone Age feeling like they became a better person.
Nice.
And right, because it is
Nice.
holistic, right? You don't just separate your
Yep.
work self from your personal self.
Absolutely.
And I've had spouses of my employees come and say to me, because we do a lot around coaching, we do a lot around understanding triggers and really that whole personal development, not just professional development. And
Mhm.
the best compliment I can get is when a spouse or a partner comes to me and says, "Oh, he or she, it's just it's so much different. It's so much
Oh.
better at home with our family
Oh.
because of the work that they've done here. Not the work
Yep.
of their job, the work of
Yep.
the of
On
self-exploration,
them.
and
Oh,
yeah,
that's
and that's what companies should
amazing.
do, right?
Yeah,
Like, we should help
exactly.
people become better human beings, not just
Yes.
produce a product or service.
Exactly.
I love it. All right, so I have a couple more questions before we wrap up. So,
Sure.
the name of this podcast is Reflect Forward. What does reflect
Yes.
forward mean to you?
Yeah. So reflecting forward to me means the reflecting part. So looking back and thinking about everything that's happened. So the good, the bad, the lessons learned, what other people may have shared with us, and taking that and applying it to now so that it has impact in the future. So reflecting forward. And this moment of in the now is hopefully learning from history and if things went badly, how to not repeat those. But if we had some great successes, yay, yeah, we definitely want those to repeat. So grab that part of history and repeat that. And so that's how I see reflecting forward.
Yeah, that's great. That's a beautiful answer. Thank you. All right, and then finally, what's your best piece of advice that you have for leaders who are looking to become exceptional leaders?
I would say don't be afraid of I'm gonna call it failing, but it's really not don't be afraid of learning lessons. It like leave the ego at the door, just learn from people, be open to others being, better at something than you and learn from them. Don't feel like I'm a leader. I have to have all the answers. Like, no, learn, keep growing, have that humility piece and just be there.
That's wonderful. Absolutely agree with you. All right, and how can people find you?
Yeah, they can find me on my website at luxentus.com. They can find me on LinkedIn, Jocelyne Morin-Nurse, and I'm also on Instagram. So that's where you find me.
Fan Fantastic. I will include all of those in the show
Thank
notes as
you.
well. Jocelyn, thank you so much for coming on the show today. This is such a
This
fun conversation.
absolutely. Thank you so much. And I learned a ton too. I'm so excited to be taking all the things that you shared as well. So thank you.
Oh, well, I'm sure we'll have opportunities to collaborate in the future. So
That would be great.
that'll be really exciting. All right. Well, thanks again and hang tight,
Thank
everybody. I'll be right
you.
back. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Jocelyn. Please check out her website. I included it in the show notes. Check her out on LinkedIn. She's amazing. And if you like this podcast, please write a review, like it, subscribe to it, share it. I always appreciate it. It helps with the algorithms. Thanks so much. And I'll see you next week on Advice from a CEO on a Reflect Forward episode. Take care. Bye bye.